Hey guys, the Ginny here for XBL Party Podcast, and this time I'm doing a review of Firewatch. Now, this is an adventure game, very story heavy, made by Campo Santo. Back out in February 2016, bit late to the game here, but the game has been getting a lot of attention recently after being added to Game Pass, and it seems that people are discovering this little gem all over again, myself included. So I want to go through the game and break it down in a few key areas such as gameplay, story, graphics, audio, and then my overall opinion of the game. So I want to start with the dev actually, and they've done a really good job here on this game. It's quite a small studio, but they seem to have fallen off into obscurity. They announced another game following this about 6 years ago, and there's been nothing since. So hopefully everything's okay, and we'll see something on their latest ventures soon. Gameplay wise then, Firewatch starts as a bit of a narrative driven game. You get a basic story delivered on screen in text, and then you get to choose which options you want to go to progress the story and set the theme for when you move into the open world adventure style later on. Speaking of the gameplay then, it is quite basic but intriguing. The game is very simple with very few button inputs. It can be played almost by anyone. Think more of what remains of Edith Finch style gameplay. It's very simple, there's a lovely open world to explore, and your gameplay loop is you speak to somebody on a radio whilst you're out in the middle of the forest as watching for fires and reporting them as part of the National Forest Service, and you're having conversations with that person, selecting your dialogue, whilst also traversing the world, learning more about the environment, updating your map, discovering shortcuts. Generally, you're just playing the life of a man who's gone out to do a summer job looking after the forest and making sure it doesn't burn down. That's the core gameplay loop here. You wake up, you go do some tasks, it fades to black, telling you what day it is now, and then you pick up the next day again. I found that this method of cutting to black and giving a day number actually cut down on the tedium that a lot of games normally find themselves in. It doesn't ask you every time to traverse back to the base or make it back. You'll finish something that's relevant to the story, and then it will quickly move you straight into the end of the task, ready to go on for the next day. And I found that really helped speed things up from a gameplay perspective. So kudos to the developer for that. Story-wise, I touched on it briefly. You can't talk too much about the story of this game without spoiling it. Let's just say you're playing as Henry. He's got a lot going on in his life. His marriage hasn't turned out the way he wanted it to. No fault to either party involved. And he then takes a job to get away, earn some money, and just get some much needed time to himself. And that's it really. We start speaking to your supervisor on the walkie-talkie. And it's up to you and Delilah then what happens further. It really is an interesting story, but not one that I want to ruin here. If we move on to the graphics, it is a beautiful looking game at times. It's a very simplistic art style, and yet it's showing its age. It's about 6 years old, so it's not going to be the world's greatest looking game. It reminds me of Route 96, if you've played that. Very similar art style, but I would say there's a bit more detail here and a bit more interactivity. Yeah, overall, I like it. Graphically, it's not massively impressive, but it has a nice art style and it executes it beautifully. I guess that's the best way to describe it. Audio. Well, there's noise. This is one of the, for me anyway, there's not a lot of background music, there's not a lot of ambience going on. For me, this is one of the weaker elements of the game, is the actual audio. However, the voice acting between the two main characters is very well completed. It's believable. It really gets you involved in the story and with the characters. So from that aspect, the audio is perfect for what it's trying to capture when it's having these deep moments. But for when you're walking around and exploring and going around the open world, it can feel a bit empty and barren. I think more work could have been done on just some background and ambient noise. But yeah, voice actors, tip my hat off to them. Excellent job. So lastly, we go on to my overall opinion of the game then. I think this is a really good game. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's one that sticks with you. It is short. You can blast through this in about 3 to 4 hours. But It's a really deep story. It gets really intriguing and kind of atmospheric and it's a game where you're safe. You're never having to fight. There's no action. There's no combat. You're walking, exploring, going for a story. But my god, it can make you feel on edge and like you're being watched and very paranoid about things. It's a beautiful game with a beautiful story. Not perfect, but I would highly recommend playing this. It's 3 or 4 hours of your time and you'll be left with a game afterwards that sticks with you. One thing I will say is this has the same curse a lot of these games have when they allow you to make choices. At the end, you're given a few options of choices you can make, but it doesn't provide enough context around them. So I actually chose the wrong ending for what I wanted, and that has really, really annoyed me. Anyway, guys, that's my review of Firewatch. If you've enjoyed it, please consider giving a like and subscribing to the channel. There are new reviews, gameplay, live streams and podcasts daily on the channel. But thank you for your time.